Full Service Radio is proudly supported and hosted by Simplecast, the easiest way for a podcast creator to publish and distribute audio on the internet. For more information, visit simplecast.com.
Peace and welcome to the Edible Activist Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa L. Jones, broadcasting live from the lobby of the Line, D.C. On this show, you hear from the voices of dynamic Black people and people of color in the agriculture, food justice, and healing space as they share empowering food narratives and perspectives that stem from the land, all while exemplifying the spirit of activism in their own edible way. Let's get started. Peace and welcome to the Edible Activist Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa L. Jones, broadcasting on Full Service Radio. Let's take a moment to still our minds and reflect. When we entered into this new decade, we had no idea what we were up against. Many intentions were set. We had our plans mapped out, but we would never calculate a year like this. If 2020 was a roller coaster ride at Six Flags, we were all on it together, and the ride was not fun. But there is no joy without pain. Y'all know that song by Mace and Frankie Beverly? If not, go look it up and listen to it. I'd sing it for you, but I'm not going to do that to you all. And I respect Frankie Beverly and the crew too much. My joy was found in the voices of our edible activist guests. In the midst of racial tension and the pandemic, their words were soothing and watered my soul. As I reflect on this year, I hear all the rich conversations in my mind and the laughter and the stories that were exchanged. Yes, grief and pain were present, but these stories presented healing. Talking about growing food, making health sexy, fighting for food apartheid, accessing land. It makes my heart smile because the work continues. So thank you to my outstanding guests for being the master teachers in griots. I appreciate each of you. Before I conclude 2020 with this finale episode, let's take a listen at some of our dynamic edible activists. Their words are filled with truth, joy, and reverence.
And what I am aspiring to do is to create the people's pharmacy. So this should be as sexy coming into one of our locations. It should be as sexy as any other place you'd have a first date. It should be as attractive as any Starbucks or, so we are really giving people a third answer. It's not legal addictive stimulants in the morning. It's not legal addictive depressants at night. It's that middle, it's that other space. And so, that's what our aspiration is. Because I got to tell you, my father's places were very Spartan. I love him to pieces, but his design sense is not by design sense. So shelves with a bunch of stuff on it, and it had everything you could name from A to Z, and it's encyclopedic. His knowledge, he's an ethnobotanist. He teaches at Yale. Well, he just retired recently, but that. It's very Spartan, and what I am aspiring to do is kind of blend those things. This should be a place that feels welcoming. You could have a first date. We have a lot of last dates in here too. You can have all kinds of.
Let's put that out there. And can I also put out there, whenever I walk in Calabash, I feel 1,000 times more sexy and even more sexier when I walk out. Okay.
You already were when you came in, so
and that's so true.
But I think the idea of designing space for health has to also look sexy, because being and people may, I just want them to wrap their minds around this, that the idea of looking sexy, and I'm not talking about like, the Kardashian. I'm not talking about like any, fake me out stuff. I'm
I
talking
gotcha.
about
I
like
gotcha.
just the wholesomeness of looking juicy and toothsome and sexy and attractive is all based in the proper balancing of your hormones. So when you say somebody looks attractive, it's because they have a little blush to their cheek. They have their skin doesn't look dry; it looks moist. Their hair looks strong, their teeth look white. Like there's all kinds of things that sort of you scan immediately about a person that actually have to do with your health. And it's nature's trick to make sure that the people you see that you may procreate with or be attracted to or, sidle up to, that you are getting the best seed in the best soil. It's like it's a way of like, oh, that person looks sexy. But you don't realize that nature is really attracting you like a flower would. It's like, oh, look at
Ooh.
this beautiful thing. And you're just like, look at God. This is amazing.
But I come from a long line of farmers, sharecroppers. My great grandfathers, tended the land, which I don't remember them. My grandfather, on both sides, my mother's father and my dad's father, both were farmers. So, I remember as a very little girl, going with them to the fields. When I was younger, I was sitting in the truck. My grandma always, made sure I was very nice and comfy. So I recall having a blanket in the truck. I remember jelly sandwiches, but, just kind of hanging out there, under, the truck would be parked under a shade tree while they were either chopping peanuts or, planting tobacco or harvesting corn or something. So, those are my earlier memories. And then later on, when I was a little bit older, I was able to actually help them set out tobacco. So my granddaddy Arthur, which is my father's father, planted a lot of tobacco. And I remember, like I said, sitting on the back of the tractor and, putting in those little tobacco plants in that little rotary and watching it go into the ground. So that's, when I really first started loving the land. I remember, summers of them, picking tobacco and, sitting under the trees, watching the people that were handing tobacco. And then, like I said, eventually graduating to be able to hand some tobacco myself, but just always being, very present with the land and having it play such a huge role in, my family's well-being on both sides of my family.
A lot of pastors and preachers live at great distance from the land. And so we preach parables that we don't even understand in a deep experiential way. We preach about Jesus cussing out a fig tree and had never eaten a fig from a fig tree. Or
Wow.
we preach about having mustard seed faith, and we've never held a mustard seed in our hand.
Wow.
And so if preachers and pastors are living lives that are at great distance from land and farming and food, then it handicaps our ability to anchor ourselves in this deeply agrarian holy text and try to translate its truth in a way that makes sense for our context. And so you're not going to find a lot of preaching in a number of churches that is inspiring people to go and say, you know what, instead of going and buy that Lamborghini, I'm going to go and buy a farm, or I'm going to join a food co-op or a buying club, or I'm going to connect with a mutual aid society or a seed bank. Like those kind of imaginings and dreams don't bubble up. If you hear after you die, that's when you'll get your slice of the pie. Like that ain't working, Jack. And especially with younger people today, I'm grateful for you again and others who are like demanding a change here. And again, I just hope to do a part based on the examples of so many of these religious leaders who were not centered in my upbringing, but I hope to do a part in amplifying their stories, and for anybody considering ministry, helping to feed the thought that if ministry can be about love and R&B, growing food, loving people, community organizing, and social justice, then perhaps I can be a preacher. Perhaps I can be a minister, if that's what it's about. And if Heber Brown and others are showing that you can be in ministry that kind of way, let me at least dip my toe in it and see if it'll fit for me.
Whew.
The elephant in the room is this. Look, we live in a country that was built on genocide, hypocrisy, the exploitation of human beings for profit, and this notion that white men are superior to everyone else. That foundation has and continues to have a lasting impact on generations of Americans. So for the oppressed, it's like, it's meant centuries of deprivation of, economic, social, and political power. And the oppressors, it's created this distorted reality about who they are and what this country really is about. So, as you stated, we can pretty much trace state executions of Black people in this country all the way back to slavery up until now, whether it's the local police in the South who were doubling as Klan members, after Reconstruction, the federal government's COINTELPRO initiative against members of the civil rights movement, or we can just fast forward to today, the countless examples that we have of police on camera killing Black folks for no reason at all. And so the televised killing of George Floyd was pretty much the last straw in a haystack of offenses, upon Black people in this country. And, it's just been a perfect storm with this whole COVID thing. People are really fed up, and something has to change. And as an attorney, I feel like it's my duty and obligation to contribute to that change in a positive way.
This is what we need to know, is if we're paying attention, and yes, our senses are dulled. We've been eating food the body can't recognize. We overload our senses with artificial lighting. We don't sleep well. We are completely offset from the rhythm of the earth. When we're walking on the earth, we're usually insulating ourselves from the touch and feel and the energetics of the earth. So we're cut off 10 ways to Sunday. And this is what we need to know is that, and this is what happens naturally. This is why gardening is so therapeutic in such a way to have your own sense of communion that connects you to life itself, is that there's something that comes away that is not captured in the conceptual mind. It's felt. It's a felt sense. Mm-hmm. That, something just shifted in the environment. Let me stop and ask, what am I to know about that?
First of all, it gives me joy to know that I have a granddaughter, is in the world of health and food. Because when I grew up in Butler, Alabama, that's where I grew up.
Butler, Alabama.
Right.
Yes.
Country. Really country.
Like no paved roads country.
Exactly.
Still to this day almost.
Yeah. So in our living, surrounding, we had a garden. And it was fenced in. And we had a large apple tree sitting in the middle of our garden.
Wow.
And it give sweet apples. Mm. Also, in that same garden, we grew tomatoes, okra, collard greens, turnip greens, peas, mustard, snapping, just a variety of food.
You name it, you grew it.
Exactly, yeah.
You all lived off the land.
Yeah, we lived off the land. And I thought, maybe to me, that's when now I'm the age I am.
How old are you, girl?
I'm 84 years.
Yes, girl, you look good.
Yeah,
girl.
Yeah. And it gives me joy to know that I, can eat healthy food. And that's the reason now I have me a small garden in my yard. Now, just to know and have the feeling of good, healthy food.
Peace be with you all. Take some time to reflect and find your joy. Until then, Happy New Year, and I'll see you in 2021 after a much needed break. Thanks for tuning in. You can catch today's episode on fullserviceradio.org as well as iTunes and Spotify. Be sure to follow Food Talks in Color, that's just the letter N, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter for all updates. Are you an edible activist? Sure you are. Come join me on the show. Just shoot me a DM on the gram or connect with me at foodtalksincolor.com. And if you're interested in sponsoring this podcast, let's connect. Peace and blessings. And remember, in the words of Baba Tariq Adunu, there is no culture without agriculture.